New York is the city that never sleeps, and neither does Sal Licata. From Flushing in the Bronx to the Meadowlands in MSG, Sal sounds off on the biggest sports news of the day. Welcome to WFAN Daily with Sal Licata.
All right, so we have a special edition of WFAN Daily today as we tape this here at 2:07 in the afternoon, right after I just finished off the midday show. And we welcome in Tyler Ward. You may know him as Wardy, of course, who is a Mets YouTuber. Now, Tyler, you and I know each other a little bit. We had a little issue on social media, but we cleaned that up a little bit.
Yes.
We talked about working together, and I figured, you know what, why not do a WFAN Daily podcast, get your early season thoughts here on the Mets. Before we get into that, though, just for the audience here who might not be familiar with what you do, explain yourself and how you became, because even I know, I'm not big into the YouTube stuff. And, I'll admit that I'm older, unfortunately. I used to be the younger guy, and now I'm older at age 44. So I'm not into the YouTube or social media maybe as much as some, but even I knew who you were because you really cut through as a Mets YouTuber. Explain what you do and how you got started with your fandom for the Mets.
Well, first and foremost, again, thank you so much for having me on. For those that don't know, yes, Sal and I, we had an interaction on socials a couple months ago. We talked off air since then, and, I'm very grateful for the relationship and everything. So for my fans that are coming in here, especially that are wondering, am I going to go cut through it or react a certain way? It's not going to be like that. Sal and I were on great terms. And again, I appreciate the friendship here. And for those that don't know me, my name's Tyler Ward, better known as Wardy NYM, as Sal alluded to. And for the past 3.5 years now, I have committed full-time as a Mets content creator. So basically what that means is pretty much as soon as I was done with college, I was like, you know what? I started my YouTube channel, and I had done hockey for the year prior because I'm a big Ranger fan too. So I'm really enjoying my life at the moment with being a Ranger Knicks and a Mets fan. And, as Steve Cohen bought the team, I always told myself, once there would be an ownership change, that would put my foot in the door because I would have loved to discuss new ownership and what that could mean for the Mets' future, because I know it would be different than versus the previous regime, right? So once that happened, started making daily content, and we've just kind of soared from there. I'm very grateful. A lot of fans, a lot of people watching this say that I've come off as very relatable with the average fan, especially younger viewers, and even, more seasoned fans too. I feel like my natural reactions, because I definitely can be hot-headed at times. We all can in the sports space especially. But just what I've been able to do is really just be consistent with covering everything regarding the New York Metropolitans, from especially post-game coverage. I cover them on every single night for the most part. Any type of breaking news, rumor, you name it, you're normally going to find me there live on YouTube discussing it. So thankfully, we have built an awesome platform to this point. It's all thanks to the amazing Met fans. So I'm very grateful to be in the position that I'm in.
All right, cool. So now let's get into it. How did you feel about this team coming into the season? I had my reservations. While I wanted to be excited and get pumped up for a Mets season, knowing that it's not going to be the expectations that it was maybe the last couple of years, but thinking this team might be able to compete. Love the JD Martinez signing, maybe, make them a legitimate playoff contender, adding that lineup. But I didn't really believe that they were a legit playoff team. What were your thoughts on the Mets coming into the season?
So coming into the season, I definitely understood pessimism to a degree, but I think where I had a major problem was the lack of fans that didn't do their due diligence with what David Stearns is and what he can provide. David Stearns is the whole reason why we are currently at where we're at in the season right now after that tough start. And, heading into the year, I looked at all the moves he did throughout the offseason. I know a lot of people were like, these are no-name guys, but understanding the bigger picture for a Mets team that's trying to stay afloat in the playoff picture while not overspending and hurting their future, as we all know they're going to likely go crazy this upcoming offseason. So my initial impression was that this Mets team would be pushing for playoffs, either just on the outside looking in or just making in, because what we've noticed over the past couple of years in the Diamondbacks and the Phillies is just a couple games above 500, 84 plus wins, you're in there, right? So while this year might be the most difficult yet, I think, for the National League wildcard standpoint, I do think the Mets are still very much in the position, in the wheelhouse, to be pushing for playoffs and to hopefully be buyers by the trade deadline. And so far throughout the first, roughly how many games we're in now, it's kind of proving that point, even though we were very doom and gloom throughout the first 5 games, justifiably so.
Yeah, well, how could you not be? And that's the thing. Like,
Right.
I love fans who are like, oh, you're so critical or this, that. First of all, you got to be real. And as sports fans, we are irrational and we react and overreact. That's what we do. You come on after every game, you do your thing. I do my thing after every game or the next day. It is what it is. But if I didn't loved this team going in. And then they start 0-5. And by the way, Tyler, it wasn't just 0-5. It was 0-5, getting punked by Reese Hoskins again, getting one hit on opening day, almost getting no hit even in the game that they won. How could you not think that there was something more to it?
Right. And that's a good point, because the common consensus with fans, including myself, the reason why we were so fed up throughout the first 5 games is not that the first 5 games were horrendous in dramatic Metsian fashion, every which way LO Mets you could label, is that this is a year and a half continuation of exactly that. That's why we're fed up, because we went through an entire 2023 season that was doom and gloom. The season was over before it even began. If we look at 2022, look at August and then onward, it's been downhill pretty much since then. Since the Atlanta Braves quite literally overtook the Mets, this Mets team has not been able to get over that hump to play exciting, consistent, competitive baseball. But finally, again, after those first 5 games, they are a shell of what that former team was.
Right.
And how it's currently looking.
And I think you're right. See, something that, and again, even though like you know this, you know this as a try to be logical, common sense human being or fan,
Right.
but the illogical fan always takes over. An irrational, we're all irrational, so
We're
you
Mets
overreact.
fans.
Yeah, exactly. Even though and I think it's just sports fans, maybe Met fans a little bit more than others, but I think sports fans in general. But like the smarts in me say, look, I trust David Stearns. He knows what he's doing. I trust Steve Cohen. They know what they're doing. And if you start to paint the picture of, well, if, they don't need dominant outings from their starter, if the lineup could do its job and score some runs and get solid starting pitching, like there are logical reasons to believe that this team could compete. And now we're actually seeing it. And you mentioned Stearns, one of my favorite players right now, Tyrone Taylor, because he plays baseball the way it's meant to be played.
Yeah.
And guys like that, they do little things that help you win ball games, whether it's stealing a base, putting the bat on the ball in a key spot, catching the ball in the outfield. Like guys like that help you win. Harrison Bader, another signing, a defense first guy, but a guy who's shown the ability to be clutch. We saw him with the Yankees in the postseason. I know health has been an issue, but those type of moves, it's why I went on and said that the Mets won the offseason. They may not have gotten the best player like the Yankees did with Juan Soto, but they made a lot of little moves that can lead a team to winning ball games. And now, Tyler, since that 0-5 start, you've seen that turn around in almost historic fashion where they're already over 500.
Exactly. And you bring up a great point too with Tyrone Taylor. If people, for people watching this that have followed the content throughout the offseason, when David Stearns first made that trade with his former club in the Brewers for Adrian Hauser and Tyrone Taylor for a lesser prospect that's going to miss the entire year with injury, I mean, it was the biggest slam dunk, lopsided, dumpster dive in the best way possible for the Mets. This was a situation very similar to AA and the Braves, where they take advantage of a smaller market team that's trying to shed payroll, but still has quality players that can help you. Tyrone Taylor is a fastball heavy hitter. He's a guy that can command left field, center, right without a problem. Let's not forget his awesome catch on Marcell Ozuna there in the Atlanta Braves series, and then his speed on the bags.
Mm-hmm.
He's looked great in clutch situations. Harrison Bader, as you mentioned, too, has looked fantastic. He has exceeded my expectations. I was frustrated. I was screaming my head off, probably like every other fan, when he's rounding first to try to leg a single into a double. He stopped that since then. Things are looking great with Bader and his late heroics over this past week. And yes, now the Mets are on a heater that is surprising a lot of fans, including myself, because there was not a stretch last year where the Mets were trying to compete where they won 10 out of 13 games. And that's where we currently find ourselves in.
Is my internet screwed up or is that yours, Wardy?
I'm perfectly fine on my end. Yeah, is there anything going on?
Because I'm hearing you. No, I mean a little bit. Yeah, I'm hearing you a little bit choppy at times. It's not the worst thing in the world, but I figure I'm like, come on, you're a YouTuber, you're a pro at this. I mean, you should be hardwired in.
I have everything, all the audio set up properly.
Okay. No, audio sounds fine. It's just the freezing a little bit. It could be our end. I don't know what Hoff did here. I'm on his laptop here. Anyway, we'll continue moving on.
Okay.
So yes, they have. Not only are the Mets playing well, they righted the ship almost immediately after starting the season. Like they looked like one of the worst teams in the league. Do you think what they're doing now is sustainable? And maybe not to the level that they're doing it. Like they're not going to play 10-3 baseball over every 13 game span. But what do you think is more realistic to what this team is? The slower start, not as bad as that, but closer to that, or closer to the team that now has been rattling off wins at a ridiculous pace against good teams?
I think you can make the argument. Obviously, you want to say somewhere in the middle, but given the fact that this team is exceeding to the extent that they are without their ace in Kodai Senga and without one of the best sluggers in baseball in JD Martinez, you have to wonder how high is their ceiling this year. So, like as things currently stand, 10 out of 13 against very good teams is great to see, but I still feel like we have yet to see the best from this Mets team this year. So, yes, I wouldn't bank on winning the next 10 out of 13, but I think the Mets are going to continue to stay afloat where more often than not, they will be an above 500 ball club. I think their lows are not going to be as low as they were last year by any stretch.
I like the way that you said that about the, how high is this team ceiling? Because maybe that's the better conversation, right? It's not about which team are they, the 0-5 team or the 10-3 team, because we know they're not really either of those.
Right.
Probably somewhere in the middle. But could they be a team that we can expect to go out there and win series? Like for the road trip, even though the Mets have been playing great baseball, I still feel like, hey, if you could get to 3-3 in this road trip, I'd love that. And really, if you were a winning team, you should expect a little bit more, 4-2. I'm kind of expecting, or at least embracing or bracing myself for a 2-4 road trip. Yeah, I'm going to need to see more. They're winning me over, certainly, with the way that they're playing. The chemistry is undeniable. The energy, the fight, the comeback wins. Second in baseball, at least it was yesterday, I think, second in baseball to only the Baltimore Orioles with 7 comeback wins. All those things are great signs, but I'm not there yet with believing this team is legitimate. I need to see a little bit more.
And that's completely fine and justified. I mean, us Mets fans know better than anyone else. It's not to buy stock too early into the season. It's to make sure you play out the normal 162 with all the highs and lows that come in between. But just to add one more thing on that West Coast trip in particular with the Dodgers, what's very exciting about this is obviously you got Yamamoto that's matching up. So we'll see how that goes against the Mets with everything that transpired in the offseason. But this is a Dodgers team that is not playing nearly to the level that they would like to right now. Their bottom half of their order offensively has been laboring big time lately. They're a very vulnerable club at the moment. So I hope the Mets can take advantage with the hot streak that they've been on. And again, going into this away trip with the best series possible, their confidence is at an absolute high. Take advantage of a Dodgers team that's not playing to their best, because this is a Dodgers team where I'm sure fans are a little doom and gloom, but they're also the same type of team that's likely going to go out in May and win 10, 15 straight games, doing their best Braves impression, right? So I think it's imperative for the Mets to take advantage of this specific opportunity against a Dodgers team that's looking more vulnerable than maybe some expected at this point in the season.
I want to get to Lindor in a second here. We'll do another few minutes here, as we usually try to keep these things short. We'll go a little longer here, Wardy, with you. What part of this ball club do you think is the either the greatest strength or the most likely to be sustained? It should be the way, by design, coming into the year, it should be the lineup, I would think, would be the strength on paper. I like the bullpen. I think they've been terrific. Bullpens could be fickle. We'll see what happens the rest of the year with some of these lesser known guys. The starters have been solid, what you like. Give 5-6 innings, keep the team in the game. It's been a nice recipe here. I'm not sure which part I believe in yet to be sustainable. I have my doubts about some issues with the lineup. I have some doubts about the rotation, and I worry about the bullpen. Be curious to get your take of those 3 areas, which one you think is the most likely to sustain their success.
That's a great question, because right now there's arguments for all of them. Like, you got a rotation that currently in the NL is best in baseball right now in the NL with their best ERA. Strikeouts are looking fantastic. I mean, the rotation is surprising everyone right now. But the one thing that isn't surprising is their lack of length, only going 5 innings at most for most of these guys. That's why a bullpen is so important. So while this lineup is looking fantastic and I'm very happy, that's something where I still need to be sold on more. Once JD Martinez gets here, how does he acclimate? Does he have a slow start? Does that impact the rest of the lineup? How does Manny go about that? So while I too still have some reservations with the lineup, even with the great late heroics that they've been having over the past 10 games, I actually have the most faith, believe it or not, in the Mets bullpen. And the main reason why, again, is because of David Stearns. David is showing us quickly that, again, you don't need to have the sexiest pickups in the offseason to get guys that can get you quality outs. It's about different pitch shapes, different arm slots. Again, just getting a lot of different looks is what he cares about. That's why you're seeing a guy like Reed Garrett come out and lead the way right now with an over 50% K rate that no one expected to impact the Mets bullpen initially heading into the season. So I think you got a lot of creative options with the bullpen, Shintaro Fujinami in AAA, plenty of others too. The Mets have options there where I can't necessarily say I have the utmost confidence in, the entire year with the rotation when it comes to, okay, if they get beat around quite a bit, how they bounce back. If they have some key injuries, how do they bounce back with their current depth, right? Can Christian Scott prevail as that prospect? We have yet to find that out. There's a lot of question marks there, but so far, the bullpen has not only been a great, somewhat surprise, but one that I actually have a good amount of faith in.
Yeah, and I love that. I love your point about Stearns too. I do trust him. I love especially when building a bullpen, the lesser known, lesser named guys. You take a chance on them. They brought in a bunch of different guys, and you hope to hit on 2 or 3 of them. Right now, it's been looking good for the Mets. And even Wardy, they've changed my mind on how to build a team. Not just this year. It's obviously been the evolution of the sport, but I was always, you need the horse, not 5 horses. You need the one horse, that ace atop the rotation. It'd be great if you had the 1-2 punch. And they had that obviously with DeGrom and Scherzer, or Scherzer and Verlander. That to me was always the best way to build a team. And you could figure out the rest and get to the postseason and have those guys dominate. Obviously, it didn't work out for the Mets for many reasons, but we're at a spot in the sport where all these guys are getting hurt anyway. Maybe the best way to build a team is to try to load up that lineup, load up the bullpen, and get solid starters who could go out there and give you 5 to 6 innings, get guys on 1-year prove-it deals, bounce-back deals, and go out there and take your chances to win. I like so far that formula, the way the Mets have built this team.
So here's a quick question for you, Sal. What has been your biggest surprise so far this year? If you had to label one player or just one part of the team, what has been your biggest disappointment here, even with the Mets winning 10 of their past 13 games?
Good question. I would say the biggest surprise is probably Beatty, because he's been a difference maker for him. His energy, he looks like a different player. I'm not even just talking about the production. He looks like a different player. The 3 to the head, whatever. He's excited, showing emotion. I love that. He looks confident. Where I watched him a year ago, you could see some skill, but I didn't look at a player that felt like he belonged. So I'm pleasantly surprised with Brett Beatty. I think he's been a big difference maker. I hope that that's sustainable. Disappointed in? I mean, Lindor's a historic slow starter. I do want to get to him before we say goodbye here. Yeah, I mean, everything else has been okay, I guess. Even McNeil, Nimmo, you go around the horn a little bit. I'm actually not really disappointed in any aspect, which is crazy, like overly disappointed. You could be frustrated by some slow starts, but I believe in Lindor. I wouldn't say that I'm disappointed in anything yet. Maybe a little bit underwhelmed by Alvarez's offensive output. I thought maybe he'd have more of an impact with the power this early on. But again, he's been fine. It's so early. I'm not. You have somebody in particular, something that you're disappointed in?
I know. I mean, with Lindor, the slow start, and we can transfer into that in a second. I mean, that's the obvious one. But to your point, you kind of need to be nitpicky right now as a Mets fan to really go out of your way to say what is not working well at the moment. You're having a rotation exceed expectations like no tomorrow, a bullpen doing the exact same thing, and a lineup that is doing anything but roll over, which is polar opposite from what they were in the first 5 games of the season. I mean, this is probably one of the best spots of the year that we're going to have a discussion and say, hey, there isn't a lot of doom and gloom in Mets land,
Yeah, you know what? I'll give you one. JD Martinez. That would be the one. Maybe I didn't feel like he was in shape. Yeah, he's not. They signed him to be a big part of the offense. Can't get in shape. Can't get on the field. And who knows what's going on with him? That would be the only one. But you're right. All right, let's get to Lindor here before we say goodbye. First of all, I love Francisco Lindor as a player. I liked him before the Mets got him, and I didn't like him much the first year. But I loved him after that. I thought he rebounded nicely, got better with Buck, took accountability, showed some maturity, and I've always felt like he's missing feeling the love from the fan base. He's not having as much fun because he's trying to do too much to win the fan base over. And I thought it was great to have the fans go out there and show him encouragement. And I do think ultimately it's going to go a long way. I don't think Lindor is done by any stretch. I think it's just a slow start. He'll get going. But I love the fact, Wardy, that Met fans did that and changed their mindset, even if it were for a night or for a weekend, to show some love to a guy who I think needed it and a guy who I think ultimately will respond with the Met fan.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head because Mendoza said it himself in an interview earlier today I saw from the Mets that not only Lindor rally with that, but the entire organization does, right? If you're trying to uplift, again, a player that's down, that's off to a slow start. And this is why I personally get into a lot of arguments with fans that are in favor of like, oh, let's go and boo the guys right away. I'm like, how much benefit do you really think that's going to have for the team that you're actively rooting for? If you want to go and boom on his first at bat, be my guest, but also don't be surprised if Lindor continues to press, because believe it or not, when you have thousands of fans screaming at you, yeah, he's going to hear you the same way that he's up to date on social media and everything that's transpired throughout the ovation. I think it's a fantastic job. I hope Mets fans continue to do it, because even if you're not going to have the immediate success that maybe you saw in Philly with Alec Boehm a couple years ago or Trey Turner last year, you're still getting a Mets team that knows that they have the fans to look at and say, okay, you're going to have our backs, especially when we're down. This Mets team thrives off the fan base for both the best and the worst reasons.
And I felt like it became hostile after the 2022. I don't even want to say collapse, because it wasn't a collapse, but the fans were disappointed, and rightfully so. I mean, the Mets blew that division. It was theirs to win. They should have won that. It should have won a game in Atlanta, won the division. It could have changed everything in the postseason. Then there was this animosity, and maybe it even started before that with Lindor when he first came here, the thumbs down with Baez, all that stuff. But I thought it was important. You're right. It's more than just Lindor, although I think he's the most important piece of the whole thing. But the fact that all those players could then see, hey, you know what? Maybe they don't really hate us. They just want more of us. They expect more of us. They want us to succeed. Met fans finally did the right thing by showing some encouragement. And I do think it's going to go a long way, even beyond Francisco Lindor. But hopefully he gets it going. Well, last one for you here quickly, Wardy. How old are you? Give us your age here.
I'm going to be 24 in August.
So obviously very young. I got 20 years on you, and I've endured a lot more pain of this Mets team.
I don't wish it on anybody.
For me, I went out. Yeah. Now I've also had I've also experienced some success. Like I love 1999, and I was old enough in 1986 to have an appreciation for that, which leads me to Doc. I went there Sunday to Dwight Gooden Day. And for me, it's a no-brainer. Doc Gooden, Dwight Gooden, greatest thing ever. I got to get out there, make sure I see 16, get retired to the rafters. For you as a 24-year-old, how do you view Dwight Gooden? Do you care? Does it do anything for you? Do you understand the history? Where are you at as far as Doc goes?
So this is a great question, because it really does vary on the person to person that's in my age group, right? There's some people that literally have little to no knowledge of Doc. There's others that are like an encyclopedia that can label every statistic right off the rip like it's nothing. I personally find myself in the category of very much appreciating Doc, his greatness during his prime days with the Mets, everything that he meant during that 86 run in particular. I've watched multiple documentaries on the 86 Mets. I've done my due diligence on the entire Team Doc startup, of course, and how his career ended and where he is now. And really, just as I take a look at and looking back on Doc's greatness, he is the prime example of what it means, I think, to be a true blue-collar Met. And that goes in hand with that entire 86 Mets team. So that's my biggest appreciation, is not only his factor with that championship club, but just the overall success he had. He is one of the best pitchers in Mets history. I mean, Tom Seaver, of course, is right at the tip of the top of the list. Jake is too, even though there's controversy with it. But there's no denying how great he was at his prime when he was here. But Doc isn't far behind. You look at the amount of innings. He pitched over 2,000 innings in the Mets organization, pitched just over a 3 ERA, 8K per 9. He looked fantastic during his time here. And yes, there was controversy and all the drama that went in between. I did not go through that as a fan. So I guess the flip hand to you, has your viewpoint at all kind of changed regarding Doc, or has it always been stagnant? You've always been a fan, or you felt a certain way? Like, I'm curious from your side.
I mean, he was probably my first favorite player. I've always loved him as a young kid. So for me, Doc Gooden, it was Doc and Darryl back in the day, the 86 Mets, just growing up with that and hanging on to that as I got older, and having that be the benchmark, the reference point for me in my fandom in my life. It never got old. As a matter of fact, as we got further away, I only had more appreciation. And I got a chance to know Doc, fortunately, being at SNY, Baseball Night in New York, we had him on a couple of times. So to know one of my childhood idols and get to know him a little bit and see him have this honor, it was great for me. But I've always, look, if you're an 86 Met, for somebody my age or around my age, you've got the ultimate respect forever. Any of those guys, I don't care if it was Danny Heap, Dwight Gooden, Keith Hernandez, Kevin Mitchell, Tim Teufel, you name an 86 Met, I love them, because that was always the team. And until they win one again, Tyler, that's what we're looking at. It's the 86 Mets forever. Almost 40 years, for goodness sake, more than double your lifetime. All right. At some point soon, I really do believe in Steve and have faith that the Mets will have a sustained, successful run that will culminate in a World Series at some point in the near future. All right, Tyler, that's going to do it for this edition of WFAN Daily. We appreciate the time, man. Fun having you on. We'll do it again soon.
Thank you so much, Sal, and thank you so much to everyone that watch and listen. We appreciate you.
We appreciate it. Also, don't forget to download, rate, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Hit us up, WFANdaily@gmail.com. We'll answer your questions and comments on an upcoming mailbag episode. We'll see you later.